So, this was a really good game for it. Let's go over this game and talk about key scouting reads in ZvZ. Once upon a time, there were two Zergs, and these Zergs were on the Australia server. And I thought to myself, if I have a ping disadvantage, how can I win in a ZvZ? And the answer is by defeating your opponent in macro. Macro is a really tricky word to throw around because it doesn't necessarily indicate that the person knows how to macro or what to do. So with this replay, I'm going to try to show what to prioritize as you're just powering up if you're not going for a series of timing attacks. And on this map, in this matchup, with this rush distance and this ping, I said, not going to go for timing attacks. I'm just going to try to win in the macro race. So the first step here, 13 Overlord into a 16 hatch. And then I'm going into 18 gas, 17 pool. The first key scouting read that you get is the opponent's second Overlord. So my Overlord is crossing the map. It's going to look here for a base and then go over by the third. My second Overlord is here, and it's going to go to this location. And if you look at the map, the reason for these paths for the first two Overlords, which is different from ZvT and ZvP, is that you want to have Overlords at the exits from the opponent's base. So if 40 lings shoot out of a base, you can see those and you can respond in time. The nice thing about ZvZ is you don't have to worry about air-to-air stuff until mutas come into play, or there are hydras or something like that later on. So you can just sit some Overlords outside the opponent. So my first one is going to end up here, where I can see this exit from the opponent's territory. And then this is the other exit. So my other Overlord is going to be here. So we don't know yet about the second Overlord, but as my Overlord passes this second Overlord, we can rule out a couple cheeses. If you don't see a second Overlord, this could mean that they're going for a one-base play, or they're going for a 14 hatch into a ling float all in, something like that. So here I can rule out those earliest cheese builds. If you did think that you were getting cheesed and you didn't see their second Overlord passing at the correct time, which is 13 supply, we both made this Overlord. The main crisis management is to get both of your queens and put them in the ramp as fast as possible. That's the strongest move for shutting down cheese. If you can control this zone, then you can leverage your drone lead by just mining more in the main base. Even if you lose your natural, you can still be in a good spot, keep making queens, gradually push out, retake the space, and then play it out as a macro game. But as it stands, my opponent here is playing a respectable macro game. Incredible. So I'm going here with the Overlord. I just want to see the creep and then get out. I don't want to go in too far because then I could lose it to the queen. Now I'm going to send my 4 lings. I had these lings on an attack command so that if they did meet the other lings in the field, they would be the first ones to attack. This ling versus ling relationship can be a decent point of momentum for you. If the opponent ends up getting the better end of it, then they have map control very slightly. It's kind of similar to the Terran versus Terran, Reaper against Reaper matchup. But in ZvZ, you've got ling versus ling. I'll just flesh out some other choices I made in this build order. This is a 30 hatch for the third base. 30 hatch third base in ZvZ is something that a lot of players feel intimidated to take, but this is a strong and bold move. You don't need to be scared to take a third hatchery if you know your opponent isn't going for those earliest cheeses, especially if you can see they have a third. But this third hatch is a ton of HP, 1500 once it's fully created. It's also larva income, which is one of the biggest edges you can get in ZvZ. And it's another place to mine from. So that's fantastic. Take your third base at 30 supply. And then I'm taking my Bane Nest right around 33 supply. Got my 2 queens. These lings are just pressuring this third a little bit. We're both at 26 workers, making Overlord so I don't get supply blocked. That was something like a 31 overlord and then now a 38 overlord. And I'm making a third queen for my natural. And since we're just macroing, I think that is worth fleshing out what it means to just macro. Basically, Cyril is the ZvZ macro god. He plays in the most solid way, where he doesn't take risks, he doesn't hope that the opponent cuts corners, he just powers up in a sturdy fashion. And the order of that, in terms of gas spending, is Ling speed, first 100 gas, Baneling nest, next 50 gas, +1 ranged attack, next 100 gas, with a few Banes to defend if there's a Ling flood, and then you would go Lair. That's your opening for gas spending in ZvZ. Cool. Opponents got their Bane nest. Playing pretty similar styles. This queen now, who was at the natural, is going to drop a creep tumor and then go over to the third. It makes defending stuff a lot easier to have creep connection. I don't usually make a dedicated creep spread queen in ZvZ, but laying one tumor before you get over there is pretty nice. So I'm getting my ranged attack. I've got my roach warren. This goes down at around 340 or so. Is a decent time for a roach warren. This space is saturated well. This space is ramping up its saturation. I'm making 7 drones, 4 lings, 2 banes, and I've got my ranged attack. And I don't really need to scout too much because I'm playing safe at the moment. I'm droning up, keeping it real, spending my money, not being supply blocked, keeping up the injects, and then after my base spills over 16 with mineral mining drones, that's when I take my gases. One of the easiest ways to cripple yourself as a Zerg is to take these gases when you're at, say, 15 to 16 workers, and then your mineral income sucks, and you don't have enough minerals to make roaches and drones at the same time. So what I tend to do as a checkpoint is whenever this saturation passes 16, say you get 19 or 20 workers, then you take a double gas. Double gas. I messed this up because I'm typing. I'll just put it on my view. I ran in here at 4:30. If you want to write down some times, this would be a pretty good time to check for stuff like Lair. If they went for a 2-base build, this might also scout for a Spire. If the opponent walled off and didn't go Ling speed and a Bane nest, your key scouting read, instead of running Lings in, which you can't if they walled off, would be to get the fastest Overseer scout into the main you can. So you can get your +1 range the same, you can get your Lair the same, you can skip the Banes that I made. I made these safety Banes because my opponent went for Ling speed and a Bane nest. If they just went for a Evo Roach Queen wall off, I would skip these, maybe keep this just in case. And I could get a faster Lair, get this Overlord, make it into an Overseer, and then scout up here. But if it's Ling versus Ling in the opening, you can just send in some Zerglings. Here I'm trying to be fancy and do some Banes, but I don't have enough gas for both. Taking my 2 gases, filling the gases. Lair is going. And now I'm going to scout with the happy Baneling. Baneling goes in. A fun trick you might not know is that a single Baneling will kill larvae. It won't kill eggs, but it does kill larvae. Boom. So we just killed 3, which is a nice pickup, and we scouted Lair, and we also scouted the lack of a gas. So I can say I'm not going to be worried about mutas for quite some time. It's probably roaches. Roach is the most sturdy way to macro up with the ground army. And this does not look like a fast muta setup. So I'm going to drone. I'm just droning up, making 2 overlords so I'm not supply blocked. Keeping my bases injected. Lair is done. We're going to go for roach speed. Whenever this is done, we're going to go for +2 ranged. And then I'm taking this Evo and 2 gases at the same time. The thing that I noticed from studying Cyril's play is what he tends to do is go single Evo for +1 ranged, and then as +1 ranged is finishing, he'll drop his second Evo, and then get +2 ranged attack, +1 armor at the same time. It's a really nice way to line up those upgrades so they connect together. I went for a scout again at around 530. So we're kind of hitting a pattern here. I did a 430 scout into the main with lings, and then I did a 530 scout at the third base with lings. And what I'm looking for here at the third base is these gases. This is what I want to see, and I also want to see this. How many workers are mining minerals? Since there are way more workers mining minerals than gas, I'm saying, okay, at this point, this is probably a roach macro. I haven't seen any roaches, but if someone was going to go for fast mutas, they want to fill these earlier than they have. So, yep, going to be roach play, even though I haven't seen the roach warren. A lot of scouting involves thinking like a detective, where you don't necessarily catch someone in the act of going mutas, but you can see a lot of different clues that indicate, yeah, they may be going for mutas. This base is perfectly saturated. I'm going for +2 range attack, and then I'll go for +1 carapace and a 4th base. One scouting failure for me here is this base. I missed this one. I have vision at this 4th base location, which is where a lot of players will take a 4th, but you should bear in mind there are typically a few 4th base options. This is one. This is probably the next most likely one. And if someone really wanted to be fancy, they could mine through this and take this. That's a big mechanical mess to try to do that, so probably wouldn't see that very often. But now that I've hit my goal for saturation for the most part, which is about 3 bases in a bit, 3 base economy plus a 4th base, I'm making nothing but roaches. Nothing but roaches, and then another queen that I'll make in a little bit, so I have 1 queen at all of my bases, including the 4th. 68 workers for me, 67 for the opponent. Opponent is going for +2 range and an Evo. Overlord speed is really nice to take in this stage. If you're playing a roach style and you get supply blocked, you can think about the upgrades of tech that don't require any supply to research. Burrow. 100 minerals, 100 gas, you could spend your bank. Doesn't cost Overlord. Overlord speed, same thing. You don't have to make an Overlord to research Overlord speed. So those are good upgrades to just hammer out as you're macroing up. If you realize you're supply blocked. Since I hit my saturation goal, this is an okay supply block because I'm making all the Overlords I need to max out. And then I'm going to make nothing but roaches and ravagers all the way up to 200 supply. The opponent is Overseer scouting. I have an Overlord here. Having an Overseer or an Overlord on your opponent's army is one of the best scouting reads you can do. Especially if you have Overlord speed. It's really annoying to try to kill an Overseer even with Ravagers if it's following an army. So my upgrades are going. And now I'm doing what I call Crab Claw. I got a small claw here, and then a big claw here. And this is way more difficult for the opponent to manage than if I had all my stuff in one clump. In this case, we've got a strike team, and we've got a main army. And the nice thing about Defender's Advantage is your reinforcement units are way closer. So even though this is a lot of roaches, I have more roaches that are just about to finish right here, 3 more here, and 3 more here, and 5 more here. So I'm going to be able to defend this fight for sure, and I have a whole bunch more roaches over here doing an attack. There's a cool Sun Tzu quote. He says, use the normal force to engage. This is my normal force. Use the extraordinary force to win. This is my extraordinary force. These roaches are going to attack. The opponent did a similar thing, but with Banes instead of roaches. I just took this as an opportunity to max out with even more roaches. So I'm at 55 drones. He killed quite a few there, but I'm maxed, which means I'm gonna have a huge roach lead. 49 roaches, 5 ravagers against 43 roaches and no ravagers. And since my upgrades are about done, +2 is done, Carapace is done. I've hit my power spike. Now it's time to take a direct fight with the main army. And I can even use this small crab claw to help out and then flank this army. And I want to make the nicest concave I physically can. If it's not good for me, I can just back out. Roach versus roach. All the roaches are the same movement speed, assuming both players took roach speed. So if it's bad, just run away and then try to look for a better concave. Here it's good, so we're going to press through. Remember to inject through the fight and to make units through the fight. You could redrone a base, or you could make 10 more roaches, up to you. Some other good tech transitions you can go for would be hydras or lurkers or a spire. Those are all pretty legit choices. The key is to keep teching up and try to hit a power spike, and then use that power spike to lean in and win the match. So we got the overlords that scout the exits as one of the first key reads. We want to know when the third goes down for certain. We can go for something like a 430 ling scout to see lair timing and things like that. I went for a 530 ling scout to check the third to see if there are workers there. I did make a mistake of not seeing this fourth base. And then another great move is to just overlord speed, get an overseer, and zoom through all the bases. If you have overlord speed overseer, you can pretty much scout their entire territory. And there you have it. Some key scouting reads in Zerg versus Zerg. Topic suggested and sponsored by the supporters of the Neuro Patreon. Hope you enjoyed that. And so it is set into stone.